Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney, founder of the Positive Aging Community. We're thrilled to have you join us for interactive discussions with pioneers and thought leaders on a wide variety of topics related to aging and longevity. These insightful discussions and the Positive Aging Sourcebook are brought to you thanks to the support from our Positive Aging Community champions. Visit proaging.com to connect with them and discover hundreds of valuable other resources. We're excited to have you with us today, so let's jump into an engaging Positive Aging live and interactive discussion. To dive into another discussion, and I am super excited today to have New York Times and USA Today best-selling author Jane Heller, who, when I discovered Jane, this book that Jane wrote, I was like, oh my gosh, I have got to get to know this woman and invite her on one of our discussions. Jane has written a lot of books, okay, primarily novels, but one of her nonfiction books that she's written is called You'd Better Not Die or I'll Kill You, a caregiver's survival guide to keeping you in good health and good spirits. And Jane, I am so honored that you agreed to jump on with us today and talk about this book and your personal journey. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
All right. Well, now, before we dive in to the discussion about that book and your personal journey, let's hear a little bit about you. How did you become a writer? I mean, this is you've made a living as a writer. I commend you on that. That's not easy. Tell us a little bit about that path.
So after college, I went into book publishing, which is what a lot of liberal arts kids did, either publishing or advertising. And I became a publicist for several publishing houses in New York. And among my authors were Stephen King, Danielle Steele, Judy Blume, Erica Jong, lots of best-selling authors. And I loved going on book tours with them and writing press releases for them and promoting their books. And in those 10 years, it never occurred to me that I would write a book like they were doing. It looked like too much work, frankly. But then I got promoted to vice president of marketing for one of the publishing houses. And suddenly I was in boardrooms being bored, and I was no longer doing the creative work that I loved. So I said, I'm just going to take a step back and see if I can write a novel. And I did.
Wow. Okay. Now I've got your website up here, janeheller.com. And folks, take a look at all the books that Jane has written. She started out, your first one was Clean Sweep.
Right.
And then as we were talking on before the discussion, because that was successful, your publisher pretty much requested that you write a book every year. And
one book a year. Yeah.
So you've got an amazing I guess, for lack of a better term, portfolio or library. But and here's the book that we're going to primarily be talking about is You'd Better Not Die or I'll Kill You. But it appears to me that most of these are novels and fiction, but you've got two nonfiction books. Confessions of a She-Fan. I guess that was your first one. You're a New York Yankees fan.
New York Yankees, let's go. So yes, my husband and I followed the Yankees to every game in every city for that 2007 season after I had written an op-ed for the New York Times saying that I was going to divorce the Yankees on the grounds of mental cruelty because they were losing. And I was furious. So that led to the book.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Most fun
man.
I ever had.
I love it. Okay. Well, as much as I'd like to talk baseball and the Yankees with you today, I think talking about caregiving and your journey, the first question that I've got for you is, uh, and one of the reasons why I think people signed up for this is just the title of your book. You better not die or I'll kill you. Something that many of us have probably thought, but not uttered, and but some may have. But tell us a little bit about the origin of that for your book title.
Sure. So my husband Michael has Crohn's disease, and which is an autoimmune disorder of the gastrointestinal tract. And he's had he's had about 100 hospitalizations and over 30 surgeries over the course of his life. And when we met, I was new to caregiving. I didn't know anything about it. But every time he would go into surgery, they have these double doors that lead to the OR, and that's where you have to stop as a caregiver. And I would say, "Oh, can I go in with him?" And the nurse would say, "No, no, no, you have to wait out here." And so I would lean down to him and say, with my finger wagging, "You better not die or I'll kill you." And he would laugh. And that's how I wanted to send him into the OR, laughing.
Now,
So that's how.
I love it. And what I also love about this, and one of the reasons that I was eager to have you on is that you are very transparent about the fact that you like to use humor in this very stressful space of caregiving. And obviously, that statement in the title of your book is rings true.
Yeah, I think that when so my mother also had dementia, and if you go to her house and you find the phone in the refrigerator, you have to laugh. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. So you make a joke and then suddenly a tragedy becomes a comedy. And I think that that's better for our well-being. And as caregivers, we really have to care about how we're doing. And that's really the bottom line is if we don't take care of ourselves, who's going to take care of us?
Okay. All right. So now several people have questions about your book and I'm on Amazon and I dropped the link there. Somebody asked, is it in audio for Audible format?
It's not, and I wish it
Okay.
were. I'm sorry.
Okay. Um, and then and then Sandra, I and everybody, I dropped the Amazon link there to buy it in paperback or Kindle as well. Okay. So let's kind of what I do a lot of times with our authors is I'll just pull up the book and take a peek at the table of contents here. And first off, give us a give us an overview on sort of how you put this together, the journey that we would go through when reading this, and I'd love to try our best to follow that journey in our discussion today. Sorry, here we go, folks. I'm deep into the book there. Okay, so it looks like walk us through
All right.
this journey and share some insights and tips that you've learned.
Okay, so my father died when I was 6 of a brain tumor. And my mother was his caregiver for many years. And after he died, I saw how she juggled she was deeply grieving. She was a young widow. And my sister and I, she would make sure that we got to school. And um, anyway, she was really stressed, but she never showed it. And when it was all over, she sort of had a collapse. I won't say a nervous breakdown, but she was very depressed. And then a few years later, she met my stepfather, who I adored, and I was 9, and he had epilepsy and was taking medication that created complications. And again, she was a caregiver. And I remember thinking, I love my mother and I admire her and I respect what she's doing, but I don't want to be that. I'm going to marry, some women marry for money or whatever. And I said, I'm going to marry for health. I'm going to find a guy who is not going to drop dead on me and I don't have to be a caregiver. Well, joke was on me because Michael told me shortly into our dating that he had Crohn's. And I said, what's that? And he said, oh, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. I'm in remission. Not a big deal. And then a couple of months later, he had an emergency and off to the ER we went. And I learned very quickly that I was a caregiver. And that's how,
And
anybody
it,
can be a caregiver.
yeah, and you can see where I think um, as much as you were intentionally trying to find a mate that
A
you
healthy
could
man.
that maybe could take care of you versus you taking care of them,
Right.
um, none
And
of us have a crystal ball in life, and that's one of the real frustrating things about these discussions is many of us who are thrown into this world of caregiving, it's sort of like, wait, I married the healthiest man or woman in the world,
right,
and
right.
I, how could this happen? But we all wake up one morning and we may have a diagnosis or symptoms or something like that.
Everybody's
Um,
going to have something.
Okay. Now, let's see. I want to just keep track of some of the questions coming in. Lily says, this book was life changing when I discovered it. Thank you, Steve, for following up and invite. You know what? I think Lily is the one that told me about you.
Oh,
I
thank you,
was
Lily.
curious as to, and Lily says, I was curious as to what type of incident might have made you, Mrs. Heller, cry during the caregiving journey and how you came back from that. So I guess when you have a frustrating experience, can you share any?
I can. I
Okay.
can. I remember it very distinctly. I Michael was in the hospital and my car was parked in the lot adjacent to the hospital. And the surgeon had just come out of surgery with him and said to me, he did okay, but he can never have another surgery because they had cut so much of his bowel and resectioned it. They said that he will suffer from something called short gut syndrome, which is too technical for anybody to get into. But the point was, I had bad news. I had scary bad news. And I held it in while I was with Michael. I didn't show any fear or concern. I just said, oh, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. And then I got to my car, which was like this little womb. I closed the windows and I was just there by myself. And I just started sobbing and sobbing for 20 minutes or so. And then when I was done, I said, okay. I can cry, I can be sad, but I can handle this. Whatever it is, I'm still here. You can cry all you want, but you're still here. That's how that chapter came.
Wow. Lily, thanks for asking that question, and I'm glad you could share that experience with us. And then marijuana, no, Maya asks, could you share how your book has been able to bring encouragement to the family and sick going through chronic diseases? Or perhaps maybe another way of reframing that is, Jane, is there anything that you can offer to us that may be going through chronic diseases with our loved ones? Any words of wisdom and encouragement?
The one thing I would say with a chronic disease or illness is that you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days, but it's probably not going to get better. You're in it for the long haul with a chronic illness. So in Michael's case, he has flares. And when he has flares, he's really sick. And I just have to be there. And then there are times when he's great and he goes, let's go out for dinner. And so it's a roller coaster with a chronic illness. You're going to be up and you're going to be down. And you have to try to keep an even keel and not let yourself get sucked into the up and down.
Now, from the point of the diagnosis to where Michael started seeing, symptoms, how many years has it been that you've been that he's been dealing with these symptoms and you've been a caregiver for him?
Okay, so he was diagnosed at age 11, long
Okay.
before I ever knew him. And now we've been married 33 years. So from even before we got married, he's had Crohn's. So I've been at it for that long, 30 plus years. And sometimes, as I said, things are going great, and sometimes they're not. And I know that's going to happen. Like, and he'll say to me, I'm fine now, and I will leave him. But I also know in the back of my mind, you won't be fine in another few months, let's
Hmm.
say. He gets infusions of a drug called Entyvio every 6 weeks. And after the infusions, he does pretty well. And then eventually they wear off. So it follows a similar path to how it feels to be with someone with a chronic illness.
Okay. Now, you mentioned your mom was diagnosed with dementia. And so many of the people in our community and listening to this are in a similar boat. Can you kind of, and I realize that happened after you wrote this book, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. D- would you mind sharing a little bit of what your journey as a caregiver for your mom with dementia uh was like, and any insights that you might share there?
Yeah, sure. Um, First of all, my mom passed away about 9 years ago now. But she lived to be almost 100. And, we were planning her 100th birthday and she just didn't make it. But for us, my sister and me, we, the struggle was what to do about mom. So we knew that she was losing her memory, and we knew that things were not making sense to her. And we had to do something. She lived in a house at the end of a private road on 7 acres by herself. I said, Mom, if you slip and fall, you're going to be there for days and nobody will know. Do you want that? because she kept saying, I don't want to be in a place. She kept
I'm not
saying,
ready yet.
I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm not going there. I know other people have gone there. I'm not going there. So we said, well, you have a choice. You can either go there or you can have somebody come and live with you and take care of you and have a professional caregiver. And she said, well, okay, I'll have somebody come. And that wasn't it. We sent her about half a dozen caregivers. She rejected all of them. She said, no, I don't like her. I don't think she can handle it. And we it got to the point where we just said, okay, we're just sending you somebody. And this woman named Sandy, who is a godsend, um, had her bag packed in the back of the car, and she got to my mother's. And thank God my mother loved her. And they were together till my mother died. So 7 years or so. And she did everything for us. She she helped my mother. She drove to her doctor's appointments. She gave her medications. She was there at the end when hospice was there. Uh, she was a member of our family. We were very lucky. And if anybody needs one, a caregiver, I would recommend Sandy.
Okay. Now you're in California, right?
Yes, but she's in Georgia.
Oh, oh,
Go
wow.
anywhere.
Oh,
So
so where was your mom
in
living?
New York.
Wow. And Sandy has traveled around the country
Yes, she
as a
has.
live-in caregiver.
Yes.
Wow. Man, what you're right. I mean, how lucky to find one person that you could afford that was there and caring for your mom because
And
many
trust.
times we talk about the revolving door of caregivers, where it's a different person every day, which can be very disruptive to a person with dementia. Um, Okay, so now out of curiosity, were you and your sister in New York when your mom was receiving care, or were you in California?
I was partly in California, but then I realized I needed to be back east. I couldn't caregive from 3,000 miles away. So I left California, and Michael and I bought a house in Connecticut, right very close to where my mother's house is. And then I could be with her all the time. I wanted to be with her till her end. I didn't want to miss anything and I wanted to help. So, but Sandy she glued our family together. She did everything for us.
Wow, boy,
My
that
mother would
that's
forget our birthdays and she would send us cards. She just did everything. She was great.
oh, what a wonderful caregiver. Boy, I tell you, I love real life stories, and what you're making me realize, I would love to spotlight some of these exceptional caregivers
Yeah, have
on
Sandy
here.
on.
I would, as you're talking about Sandy, I would love to interview Sandy on, what is it that you do that, has created this endearing relationship with Jane and her family. Um,
Yes.
let's see. Okay. Um, let's, um, let's okay, so now one of the chapters, we've got some more questions, so we're going to definitely get to, but one of the chapters that I think will resonate with folks is doctors can't live with them, can't live without them, because doctors are tied to so much of our healthcare. How are how any thoughts on this,
A lot of
on
thoughts.
working with doctors?
Yeah, doctors, I've over the years had doctors who have wonderful bedside manner and some who have zero bedside manner. And they're and it's really hard to deal with a doctor who is nasty or is dismissive. Because one of the things that caregivers need are their questions answered. They want to know, what's the diagnosis? What is his prognosis? What are the medications he takes? Are there side effects? You're asking all the questions. And sometimes doctors just want to be in a hospital room and out, especially today's medical system. You basically get a 15-minute appointment and then you're out. But so I came up with a strategy. We had a surgeon who was in and out. I would say, "Oh, hi, he'd come into the room and I'd say, "Can you take a look at Michael's abdomen? It's really red and I think it might be infected." And he would say, "No, it's fine." And then he would leave. And I said, "Okay, how am I going to get this doctor to stay in the room and answer my questions?" So the next time he came, I positioned myself behind him in front of the door. And if he tried to turn around and leave, he'd have to knock me over. So I called that box the doc. And it worked, really worked. And you just have to, and the other thing I was told is by a critical care nurse, and this is in the book, that sometimes doctors, not sometimes, but always, doctors are very busy. And sometimes they can't talk to you right then. So ask them, is there a good time to talk? Can we make an appointment to see you so our whole family can come and ask you all these questions instead of just trying to catch them on the run?
Um, Boy, I promise we'll get to more questions. Keep them coming in, but I'm intrigued by some of the titles of your chapters. That this is one that's intriguing to me. Who knew friends could be so unfriendly?
Mm.
Um, Tell us a little bit about that. I have an idea of what that's about, but I'm curious.
It's a tough one. Um, I don't know if your listeners have experienced this, but I bet they have. When someone is sick, people don't know what to say. They don't, you know, other than hang in there to you. And hang in there is not helpful. They mean well, but they don't know what to do. The other thing that happens is sometimes you get dropped by friends that, if you can no longer participate in social things, they think, oh, I might as well I don't even know if they think about it consciously, but they just kind of drop you off the radar, like it's contagious or something. And so one of the women I interviewed in the book, named Harriet Brown, she talked about stiff arming is what it's called, when friends just keep you at a distance. And I had an experience with that when a friend emailed me and said, "Hey, haven't seen you in a long time. Um, what's going on?" So I emailed back, "What's going on is that Michael just had surgery and he's in the hospital." And she said, "Okay, thanks." And I never heard from her again.
Hmm.
And she was so off my list after that. I mean, you tell somebody you're going through a crisis and they're not there. And that's how you can tell a good friend from a not so good friend.
I was hoping that that might be the rabbit hole we go down because on this platform, we talk a lot about building our personal village or having our team before we need it. And people often discover that in their orbit, they have really good friends that are either not capable or willing to kind of step up to the plate to help you in a crisis situation or in a caregiving situation. And then the irony is that some people that you might not think as your best friend or somebody that would come are are there every step of the way.
Yeah.
And you know, Jane, I I love your reflections on this because you know, many of us think about, okay, I might need a caregiver when I'm like in your mom's situation,
Mhm.
older adult, you know, with dementia. But you sort of fell into the caregiving situation much, much, much before the expected time. So you didn't have time to sort of cultivate this personal village that might assist you with caregiving. Um, Tell us a little bit about like what your current village looks like, or how has that morphed over the years?
Well, it's more because one of the reasons is we've moved back to California. And so our friends here are we don't have a large group of friends. We have a small but very good group of friends. And so I know that if Michael is in the hospital, I know who to call. I can call my friend Lori and she will say, "What can I bring?" I'll come over and bring some soup or whatever it is. And my friend Tony will always come and visit and bring me whatever it is I need, you know. So we have a core group, and it's
Man,
really important.
that it really is. And we try to get folks to think about this in advance because I mean, when you said you know, I don't know if at any point in your life you had a larger circle of friends, but the it can be challenging, you know, when you're caring for somebody with a healthcare issue, like there's guilt. I can't just go out and meet new people and leave them alone, and it might be challenging to go out together or what have you. So
And people don't want to deal with it. People don't want to know about your problems. And you don't want to go around, go to someone's house and be woe is me and cry, all the time. That's a bore for everybody. So you
mhm.
have to pick your shots and know who is there for you.
This is great. Okay. Great insights. Okay. Carrie asks, how did you maintain your career and working and being a caregiver?
With difficulty. I have a chapter in the book about something like, if you work, you feel guilty, but if you're not at the hospital, you feel guilty. So what do you do? I, I, as an example, Michael was in the hospital. I was supposed to be finishing a novel, and I said, "Would you mind if I just took the day off today and worked? I really need to." He said, "No, by all means, go ahead." So I was in Connecticut, he was in New York, and I called him just to check in. And I said, "How's it going?" He said, "I'm freezing. No, none of the nurses will give me a blanket. I'm just freezing." And he just started complaining, which is something he never does.
Hmm.
And I said, "I'll be right there." And I left what I was doing and I drove 90 miles to the hospital and I got there. I don't know if anybody's seen Terms of Endearment, where Shirley MacLaine goes to the nurse and says, "Give my daughter her pain medicine." I was like that. I said, "Give my husband a blanket." Because I walked into his room and he had his little windbreaker over his shoulders,
Ah,
shivering. And I said, "There's no excuse for this. All he wants is a blanket. Tell me where they are and I'll get them myself."
hmm.
So uh, you have to juggle. You know, people have to go to work. And you either have to get somebody to take your place, and like a friend, I could have that day asked a friend, could you go and visit, stay with Michael? And I didn't.
Or like, unfortunately, we don't think that you should have to do this, but it may be a paid patient advocate, which is now a profession, somebody that
Yeah.
can advocate on behalf when either we or our loved ones can't be there. Um, Okay, I want to we've got about 20 minutes till the top of the hour, and I want to kind of move to sort of the end of the book and talk a little bit about sort of some of the chapters that you've got on end of life and spirituality and getting through the goodbye. Like can you share any insights and or any personal planning that you've done in this area?
Oh, well, the one thing that I'm sure this is old news, but you need to have an advance directive, and different states call it something else. An advance directive or advance healthcare and a financial
Power of
proxy
attorney.
or power of
Yep.
attorney. And, nobody wants to think about these things, but you have to. And so we went to see an attorney and drew that up. And we kind of made a game out of it. Like I said to Michael, if you have this, do you want to have additional medical measures? Or do you want, you have a choice between, do you want to be kept alive or do you want to let go? And I'm somebody that does not want any any interventions, but he does. So
Hmm.
everybody has their own personal choice. And so it's important that you deal with these things before, because let's say your mother dies and she doesn't have an advance directive. Then the siblings get together and they say, well, I think mom would have wanted this. No, I think, and the hospital doesn't know who to believe. And so one of the doctors said to me, you've got to tell your mother to pick the person she trusts the most to do the things that she wanted and carry out her wishes. So that's a piece of wisdom that I learned.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you, you're an interesting case study here because you've basically been living with Michael for 30 years with this with Crohn's, and it sounds like multiple ins and outs of the medical system and hospital. Did you ever get to a point where you're like, holy cow, I better grab that advanced directive? Like, did you have any close calls along this journey?
Not really. No. I
Okay.
mean, not to the extent where I thought he would die. No.
Um,
Um, he was very sick, but well, actually, I'll take that back. Um, he had home health care after one of his surgeries, and the nurse who the doctor sent um, said was there to change his dressing and said, "What is that?" And we said, "Well, you're the nurse. What are you talking about?" She said, "I think his colon." This is not. I probably shouldn't talk about this, but anyway, there was an emergency that we had to rush him to the hospital, and he had to be. It was a complication of his surgery, and we had to. It was close. It was serious, and he had to have another surgery, and he was in the hospital for a long time.
well,
And yeah,
now, um, you have a chapter called The Home Health Invasion. Okay. And I think your story may be kind of in alignment with that. but many of our community members are just like your mom. No way. I'm not going to any community facility, whatever we want to call it. And therefore, if they need health care, it means home care. Share with us some of your insights on the home health invasion and any words of wisdom to folks that may have to go through this. And obviously, you just shared with us a great success story with your mom.
Well, yes. And Sandy, my mother's caregiver, made very sure that she was never in my mother's space. She left her, not never left her, but she kept out of her way. She could tell without words when my mother wanted to be by herself. And then sometimes my mother would wander into Sandy's place and room and say, "Can you help me do this?" And so Sandy would always take her cue from my mother. In my case, the home health care that we had, I was trying to work. I was trying to write a novel, and they would make so much noise, and I couldn't concentrate because I would overhear. I didn't want to not be standing over them when they were working on Michael, but I also had to do my work. It was annoying and life-saving at the same time.
Hmm. So I guess if you had to sort of rewind the clock to that experience, um, and any thoughts on how you might have framed it differently? Like because let's face it, when we bring home care into our homes, we've never done this before, and so I guess defining the roles a little bit better, perhaps.
Finding roles, and also, this will sound really stupid, but try to find someone with a very easygoing personality. People don't always get along, and you need to not clash with the caregiver. You have to you have to find a way to get along. And so don't bring your big personality into the setting. You know, hang back and let them do what they do.
Okay. Um, So I'm watching the clock here. I want to your chapter, Who Has Time to Cook a Healthy Meal? We do. Um, Tell me a little bit about nutrition and your experience here and what you're diving into in that chapter.
So when Michael was in the hospital, I would come home like at 10 o'clock at night and be starving because I would never want to leave him and go to the cafeteria, which was really foolish. But I was so hungry when I got home that I would just, whatever was in the refrigerator, didn't matter what it was. I was mindlessly eating. Um, Everybody talks about being mindful these days. I was not mindful at all. And I just kept, it wasn't a pleasure. It wasn't nutritious. It wasn't anything. I don't even know what it was. But I remember thinking, I can't go on this way. I don't feel well. I, you know, I had my own stomach issues, and I said, I have to find another way. So I asked Martha Rose Schulman, who was writing a uh, cookbook, a cooking recipe series for the New York Times. And she provided some recipes that are quick and easy and not a big deal. And I put them in the book because you can't, just the same way as you have to exercise while you're visiting someone in the hospital. You cannot just sit there in one place for hours. Being sedentary is the worst for your health. So get up, walk up and down the stairs in the hospital, walk around the block if it's warm enough. I put things in the book that I thought would be useful for exercise and nutrition.
Yeah, and also like just your for Michael, eating right when you have a diagnosis of something like Crohn's disease, just him, both of you eating right together, eating healthy and exercising is 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 if not as important as the medication that he's taking, it is important.
It is important. I can't really get him to exercise. He hates it, but but I
Um, now I kind of would like to end this on a high note, and one of the main reasons why I was very intrigued and have you on board, and that is you talk about laughter being the best, if not the only medicine. And share with us some insights on, humor. And, obviously you're this best-selling author. And so people must just think that, humor and just comes naturally. But how can us mere mortals, integrate humor into this caregiving situation?
well, I think the last chapter or the second to last chapter of the book, I'm not sure, is how do you find silver linings? There's a chapter in there called Silver Linings, and humor is a part of that chapter. But people think it's strange to say there's a silver lining to being a caregiver or having to deal with an illness, whether it's terminal or chronic. And one of the silver linings is everybody says who I asked in this book. And I did interview many other caregivers, some famous, some not so famous. And they all said, I didn't know I was this strong. I didn't know I could handle this. And so they came away with an understanding that they were much stronger than they ever thought. So caregiving was empowering in a way that I didn't expect. And also, and you brought this up, Steve, that they made new friends as a result of this. They would meet, if their parent was in a facility, they would meet other caregivers in the waiting room and say, what's your mother here for? What's your dad here for? And they'd say, let's go out to lunch after. And I know friendships have been formed by, it's not an organized support group, but they just have a way of meeting by osmosis. And that turns into a wonderful friendship.
Yeah, I mean, none of us want a diagnosis, but but we're some of us are going to have a diagnosis. And I've had the good fortune to be really connected to a wonderful community of people with Parkinson's and movement disorders, and they all echo what you're saying is that in fact the friendships that they've formed with other people with the same diagnosis are oftentimes stronger than the bonds that they had with, friendly neighbors or,
Brilliant.
somebody they met at the PTA. Have you all personally found a community of people with Crohn's disease through your diagnosis?
Michael tried, this is one of the tricky parts of support groups. Um, People don't always want to sit around and talk about their pain and what's
Yeah.
wrong with them. And he was a leader of a support group, and he found the numbers dwindling because people just didn't show up. They, it was very hard to get people to, it was too depressing for people
Hmm.
to talk about it. So yeah, that did not work. for
So
him.
one of the cool things about the approach for this organization, the Inova Parkinson's and Movement Disorder, is while they have some support groups on the calendar, they like I'm involved with improv for movement and memory, and there's rock climbing and dancing and things of that nature. And I
Oh, that's
think that we're seeing the modern support group can be sort of built around a fun activity. And the thing is that you're still having those deep dialogue, support group dialogue, but it lifts people's spirits to be doing improv at least for 20 minutes, and then hey, let's dive into a problem that I'm solving. So
that's such a smart idea.
yeah, no, no, but man, well, I have to say, this discussion has been amazing. I'm so glad to have met you, and you really bring a unique perspective to this very challenging topic. I I'm equally intrigued by the oh, and Anne Marie says the Kindle version is only $2.99. What a great value there. And folks, if you ever order a book that you hear us talking about on here, and it I know some of you have already read Jane's book and it's impacted you, but don't hesitate to drop me a line. Jane, I would love to share with you anybody that tuned in, bought and read the book and gained some insights.
I
But
love to.
um, first off, let me ask you a question. Is there anything today that you would have liked to share that you didn't get the opportunity to share with us? Or do you think we covered it all?
Think you covered it pretty well. Uh, s- this is sort of specific, and I don't know how much time we have. Um, there's a chapter in the book about an ER doctor who said to me her one rule of thumb was always, for a man, always bring a woman to the ER. Never let a man go alone. And the reason she said that was there was, for instance, a young man who came in anaphylactic shock. He had been allergic to something and his throat closed up and he couldn't breathe. And they stabilized him. But then about a half an hour later, and they had asked him, "Are you allergic to anything?" No. "Are you sure?" No. So then a half an hour later, his mother came and said, "What is he doing in the hospital? He was here a week ago for something, the same thing." And what this doctor was saying is that men, sorry, typically don't tell medical staff the medications they're taking, the doses they're taking. They don't bring their medical history the way women do. And so bring a girlfriend, bring a wife, bring a mother, a sister, but don't go by yourself.
Well, yeah, hopefully, yeah, hope of course, in this world, we can't be sexist or, what have you. But I understand that as a man, I totally understand that. We had a great discussion on journaling and the value of sort of journaling symptoms and, write down the experience that happened when you were at the hospital last time and carry that book with you. I feel really, especially ER staff, they are flying so blind when people
Yeah,
walk in there in terms of their medical history. It's really challenging.
that's why I just want to say bring your records with you.
Hmm.
Don't make them guess.
Yeah.
Bring your medications, the name and number of your primary care, etc.
Okay. Now, I'm curious, Jane. I thank you for being here. And folks, you can see on the screen, I've got all these books that Jane wrote. Uh, and as you know, we've been talking about this one, but out of curiosity, all these novels that you've written, Do you have one that really is just like your favorite, or the the one that you uh, are more attached to than others?
Yeah. Maybe, wait, can you run them again? Maybe, maybe uh, I, I do love the secret ingredient, this yellow one over there.
The
I love
secret
it
ingredient.
because it was so, it came to me so easily. And it's about marriage. It's about how, well, I don't want to get into it too much, but
Hmm.
it's about how couples, when they meet, everything is beautiful and great, and then inevitably somebody wants to change something about the other one. You say, oh, if only he or she would just stop doing that thing. And it's so it gets into a little fantasy about the heroine goes to this herb guru and gets a potion and gives it to her husband to bring him back to what he used to be with dire results. And
Wow,
it was a lot of fun. It got optioned for a film, never got made, but you never know.
man.
So I do like that one.
Wow, that's great. Again, you've got a great body of work, and I really appreciate your time and being so transparent with us today. Um, and I tell you what, I'm going to probably follow up with you and try to track that caregiver down, because she
Oh
sounds like a
yeah.
really special person.
She-
Um, well, folks, thanks for joining us. Thanks for your great questions as always. And Jane, uh, I know you're in California, so I hope you have a great afternoon.
Well, thank you. I loved meeting you. Appreciate it.
All right, y'all. Okay, everybody have a great day.